Hello and welcome to the MMQB NFL podcast. I'm Gary Gramling.
I'm Conor Rohr.
And we are 5/6 of the way through Wildcard Weekend. And Conor, we are going to start this one at the end of the Cowboys-49ers game, which was mind-blowing in all the wrong ways.
Yeah, what just an exhausting display of stupidity. It was, I mean, neither team seemed remotely interested in advancing to the next round. It was like, what was the, was it like China and Taiwan playing badminton or China and Korea? Do you know what I'm talking about? It was like the badminton match.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of Olympic badminton history?
No.
Both teams were trying to lose the badminton match because in their round robin play, they would have gotten to play like New Zealand, who was like a country that is obviously bad at badminton, like New Zealand. What do they know about badminton? But so one of those teams was like gonna play New Zealand, and so they would just like serve the shuttlecock, and then the other team would just stare at it and watch it just like hit the ground. And it was amazing. It went on forever, and people booed, and they said it was like the ultimate disgrace to badminton. This was not that bad, but it was with Jimmy Garoppolo just continuously serving the ball up to Dallas, and then Mike McCarthy running the strangest follow-up to a fake punt I've ever seen in my life. It was just, the entire thing was amazing.
Okay, let me start here, because I want to make sure that I'm not losing it. Wouldn't you rather run 2 plays from the 40 than 1 play from the 25 to the end zone?
Mike McCarthy's logic was, and he actually said this, he said, would you rather run a Hail Mary from the 40? He said from the 50, but they were closer than that.
They were on like the 40. Yeah,
he said, would you rather run a Hail Mary from the 40, or would you rather run 5 verts from the 20? And I was like, 2 Hail Marys from the 40.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Mike McCarthy spent a lot of time reading Pro Football Focus this summer, so maybe we just don't know the answer to that question.
It's the analytics thing that comes up with him, and he said it. He said he was into analytics now.
That's the thing. You can't say it. Yeah.
Yep. Oh boy. Let's look at the play-by-play and find out specifically where that play was run from, and it was from the 41. So.
He's just a liar.
It's okay. So setting that aside, he said they practiced that play, the QB draw, to set up the ball from the 25 or whatever it was going to be. You haven't practiced it well enough if neither your quarterback nor your center know to get the ball to an official before it goes down. And look, we have criticized the official on the show. They have drawn proper criticism, rightful criticism, as the year has gone on. This is not on the official. When you are in a situation where you are depending on the umpire to run like a 4-4-40 to get the ball spotted, like it's on you when the clock expires.
And what's remarkable about this is if you're practicing that play, if that's your 2-minute play, which Mike McCarthy said, we practice this play every single week. This is our 2-minute play. Why isn't the quarterback handing the ball to the official at the end of the play? Because that's what you have to do. You can't give the ball to your center. The official has to set the ball. Like, wouldn't it be great if you were the team and you just got to decide where you snap the ball from on every play? But and I'm not saying, this is not me saying like Dak Prescott screwed this up. This is me saying like, if you're Mike McCarthy, like that has to be part of it, because you have to assume that you're not going to have any timeouts, that this is a running clock. All this stuff is going on. So I don't know. It's just why was this your play? And his rationale, I mean, the 49ers did call a timeout to shift to the sideline defense. I mean, they were just basically like guarding the sideline exclusively, which is what you do during that situation. So you take the chunk plays, but under those scenarios, you would have had to have had a feel for timing on that, how long it takes for all that stuff. And everyone's saying, too, that Dak should have slid 3 yards earlier. Come on. Like, the play just shouldn't have been called.
It's, boy, I mean, in a way, it was a fitting ending for a team that just just really showed up unprepared for this game. I mean, the pre-snap penalties that just piled up as this one went on. Look, I don't want to pull Bones Fossil into this because, quite frankly, the Cowboys' special teams is what ended up keeping them in this game. That similar play where, they got the fake punt first down, they kept the punt unit on the field because they were trying to do some, chicanery with the substitution, and then did the full offense substitution, all that stuff, and they did not calculate the time correctly, and they ended up getting a delay of game, and everyone's getting on the officials for holding up the snap. I mean, you substituted, so now the snap gets held up, and the 49ers are not obligated to rush and panic and get their guys on the field. They they basically just beat the Cowboys at their own game and got a free 5 yards out of it.
I'm curious if you noticed, too. I was watching the sideline, and so Fossil calls the fake punt, and then he goes bananas. Like, he's so excited that they hit this thing. And he's like James Brown, like in the 60s. He's just like shaking on the sideline. He's so excited. And then they decide to do whatever this thing is, where they keep the punter out, and he's just like meandering about, kind of like pretending to be the quarterback, not pretending to be the quarterback. Mike McCarthy looks over at him, and then Fossil is going, no, keep them out there. It's going to work. Like, he said something to that degree. And then Mike McCarthy is just like, okay. But it's like, dude, you're the head coach. You get to decide what you do. Like, the special teams coordinator isn't in charge of the team. You are, and you can just be like, let's cut this shit out and pull these guys off the field.
Bones Fossil, just whatever.
I like Bones though. I'm a big Bones guy.
The fake punt was one of the key plays for them. I mean, look, Brian Anger was basically their player of the game in this one. I mean, he was bombing punts the entire game. The only thing that went right in this game for the Cowboys was the special team. So, but yeah, I don't know. That was a little bit of oh boy, thinking you're hot at the blackjack table and sort of getting out of control a little bit there. Take the fake punt, get your offense back on the field, and start trying to move the ball, mostly unsuccessfully again. And look, I don't really know if the Cowboys stay in this one if Nick Bosa doesn't go out with a concussion as well, because their offensive line got overwhelmed. I mean, and we haven't said that very often about the Cowboys, and the 49ers obviously have a really good front four, but they were getting pressure with four, and I mean, I don't know. It's just every phase of the game, they didn't show up.
Yeah, and if you're Jerry Jones, this presents a fairly interesting dilemma, right? Because it wasn't only Nick Bosa, it was Fred Warner, and Fred Warner was on the sideline for a lot of this. And so I think if you're Jerry Jones, where is your decision-making process go from here? Because if you remember, a couple of years ago, he freaked out when he thought he was losing Jason Garrett and fired Wade Phillips. And, now he basically has two Jason Garretts because Dan Quinn and Kellen Moore are interviewing for almost every opening. There might even be another opening in the next few weeks. We don't know for sure, but they're going to interview for almost every opening. And Kellen Moore is not Sean McVay, and don't misconstrue. Not you, Gary. I know you won't, but all you jerks out there, don't misconstrue what I'm about to say. Like, he's not Sean McVay, but owners lump people together, right? And if they were like, we're looking for Sean McVay, like Kellen Moore's the only one left at the table, It's under 35, offensive minded, all that kind of stuff, former quarterback, whatever. So he's going to get looks. Dan Quinn, this is going to be a really popular retread cycle. A lot of other owners I heard are into the second chance thing. That's going to be a big theme for this year. Todd Bowles, Vance Joseph, all these guys are going to get looks. Brian Flores is going to get hired again. So he's going to have to decide, do I keep Mike McCarthy after that game, or do I just go with one of these guys who are clearly in demand elsewhere? And I will say that, if I'm McCarthy, I'm giving a middle finger to the broadcast crew because they basically just followed him around like he was on Broadway doing a one-man show, and it was just it was just the portrait of a man like wilting under a hot sun for like 60 minutes, and he just couldn't get off the camera, and he was anguished and confused, and it was just a really, like, it doesn't represent the whole truth, but as an owner, if you're looking at that, you're probably being like, good God, what's happening here?
Well, and look, all those things you just mentioned, those were already kind of bubbling under the surface now, and it was kind of like, well, as long as they don't have a meltdown against the 49ers, even if they lost to the 49ers, you kind of be like, hey, but whatever, quality teams, sometimes they just come in and get you on the right day. Just the way they lost this game, where the 49ers really did. Look, D'Amico Ryans did really great things on the defensive side of the ball. Dak Prescott was clearly not comfortable with what he was seeing downfield. But man, I don't know. I mean, the outside of the opening drive, the Niners' run game wasn't really dominating. Jimmy Garoppolo lives another day here. But gosh, if you're Mike McCarthy, I mean, you kind of this fit a narrative too nicely. And nicely is the wrong word to use because it's not nice at all for Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, the NFL is turning into. I used to argue with, mostly joking, but sometimes not, and then that's when Andy Benoit used to get really upset with me. Like I would say that the NFL was predetermined and rigged, and then he would get very, very upset. Now, obviously, like Andy is, coaching for an NFL franchise. If it was predetermined, he's part of the bit. Maybe that's why he was so mad. He didn't want me to blow up the spot. But it just felt like if you were in a writing room, like if you were in Roger Goodell's humorless writing room, like you would be like, man, everybody out there thinks this guy is a real boob. Let's design an entire game, an entire episode around him just being a total boob, and he was. Yeah. Like, that everything about that game, down to the 14 penalties, which ties the franchise record in the postseason. Unfortunately, that's something you sign your name to as a head coach. That doesn't get blamed on the offensive coordinator. That doesn't get blamed on the defensive coordinator. That gets blamed on you.
Whew, as far as the 49ers go, look, Fred Warner, I don't know. He's obviously, whatever. We're Sunday night right now. They're going to play next weekend. That's a huge one. Nick Bosa is going to be concussion protocol. They're going to go out to Lambeau. We know the matchup at this point. And, if you're the Packers, you're probably pretty happy with the way this played out in that, yes, their two sort of defensive player of the year caliber players are now both banged up coming into this one. And if you're the Packers, you also might have some horrible memories of what happened when you went out to Santa Clara 2 years ago in the NFC title game, and Raheem Mostert, I don't know, ran for it was like 788 yards or something like that in that game.
Well, after that game, it was like they looked around and said, "Okay, it's time to get out of dime. Let's stop playing dime," and and they did. I mean, they moved into more of this defense, and it's funny. I mean, they lost to a 49ers team that was running their offense.
Yeah,
the team that created their offense. And so how did you go into that game back in 2019 thinking that you could handle that with such a light box and such light personnel? They've since changed things around, obviously. They've gotten a different identity defensively. I think they'll be better equipped to handle it. That said, the fact that like Elijah Mitchell is rolling now, along with Deebo Samuel, you essentially have in the 49ers maybe the best two-back backfield remaining in the playoffs right now. I mean, outside of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, I mean, you really do have a whole lot of talent there, and it probably comes down to Jimmy Garoppolo, whether he's able to give you a professional-grade performance or not.
All right, let's continue our journey back in time to the early one on Sunday.
Eagles, Buccaneers.
I don't know, Connor. I mean, we were looking forward to this one being a little more interesting than it actually was. And look, I was surprised. We did our midweek show, and we talked a little bit about how the Bucs' run defense maybe had slid back a little bit, and Levante David has been out, et cetera, et cetera. And Levante David ended up suiting up, and all of a sudden it looks like Todd Bowles has his full complement of players. And as much as we look at his Bucs team and say, Antonio Brown is gone now, and Chris Godwin's out for the year, and they're running out of weapons, et cetera, this was a team that rode to the Super Bowl on the strength of their defense last year. And now all of a sudden, for the first time, really since like the season opener, Todd Bowles has his full complement of players back in the lineup.
Yeah, and you're seeing them lean on those strengths. And what was so interesting was not only were the Buccaneers kind of struggling, but the Buccaneers were struggling specifically against perimeter runs. And that was Philadelphia's bread and butter going into this game, which is why I thought no-brainer. I mean, they're going to cover at the very least, and they're going to give this team a game. And it was really, for those of you who didn't watch, I mean, it's 31-15. I mean, it was 31-0 at halftime. This game wasn't remotely close. And it was sorely disappointing because, a little peek behind the curtain, I had an Eagles column that I really wanted to write, and editor Mitch said I couldn't write it unless they got the game within 10 points. And so I pouted, and I didn't want to write about the Buccaneers. And so it was a real bummer for me. But I ended up just writing about the Buccaneers anyway. But 8 rushes for 39 yards for Jalen Hurts. Miles Sanders to have 7 carries for 16 yards. That's a big boy performance from the Buccaneers, and that is what they do exceptionally well. In addition, to have Vaughn come around in their own running game, I think adds a different dynamic there. This is a better team than we've seen over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, look, their safeties were getting involved. I mean, that was they just sort of came up and basically told the Eagles you're not going to run the ball, and the Eagles didn't really have a counter punch to throw at that point. And I don't know, it got out of hand, and it was kind of a bummer because it was, when you step back and look at it holistically, it was a nice season for the Eagles here. And it was a nice season for Jalen Hurts, who's a guy that, I mean, look, back in like August, September, that front office couldn't wait to go find their Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson or whoever they were going to bring in. And, Jalen Hurts kind of fell into the starting job by default, and he ended up earning it. And he should have the job going forward here.
Am I allowed to continue my tradition of just espousing my takes that Mitch won't let me write for the website on the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, that's what this podcast is for.
Yeah, we should rename it Conor Orr's B-Sides.
It's the workaround podcast.
The Howie Roseman's Executive of the Year. And he's like, nobody wants to read that today. And I was like, I don't care. I want to shout it from the rooftops. He has 3 first-round picks next year. Doesn't need to spend any of them on a quarterback. Can replenish the offensive line, which is aging out at this point, or do whatever he wants with it. And you have your coach of the future. You won the Carson Wentz trade, like all that stuff. And I don't think anybody looks better in the NFL right now in terms of like an executive that can just high step his way into the offseason. Yeah, like the Eagles get pushed around. Yes, but like they shouldn't have been in the playoffs anyway.
I will.
7th seed is stupid.
7th seed is stupid. Jalen Reagor had a rough one today. I don't know how much of it is. It's like, oh, we got 3 first-round picks, so they'll pick 3 times between 15 and 19 at this point. I think it's like 15, 18, and 19 or something like that. But I don't know how much of it is like, oh, we have 3 first-round picks, but look at how we spent the last couple. Devontae Smith has been really good, but before that it was Jalen Reagor. Before that it was Andre Dillard. And guys just aren't really contributing at this point. What I anticipate they will do is basically, trade out of one of those picks and have at least 2 first-round picks in 2023 so that if they do want to jump back in the quarterback conversation, they can go ahead and do that when it's a much better quarterback class coming into the draft here. But I don't know. It's just... It's a bummer to see Jalen Hurts' season end this way because, whatever. He's a guy who didn't really have the trust of the full organization. Might have had the trust of the coaching staff, but he earned it through the season. And now with this performance, kind of like, oh, yeah, right. That's why in September we didn't feel great about this. Yeah.
And it's hard, too, because, like you said, the way that Tampa played them defensively, it's sort of like they sort of baited the Eagles into doing this, right? They were like, we're going to slow the conventional run down, and then we're going to force you to try to zone read it and then watch what we do with our safeties. I mean, they brought them up and almost used them as secondary helpers on whoever Hurts was trying to manipulate off the line, right? So he was trying to, if you're trying to manipulate the defensive end and then you have that one guy to take care of, they would just bring up a safety. And it's like, okay, well, now you have to deal with me too. And they just did an excellent job of defending zone read. They did an excellent job of defending conventional runs. And then that's when you're pinning Jalen Hurts into the one thing that they can't pin him into, which is conventional drop back passer. And it's hard, right? If you're the Eagles, this was a nice season. You're never going to get that performance out of Lane Johnson and Jason Kelce again, probably. So you're probably not going to be able to replicate this. And so you really do need to go out and win this offseason in order to keep this going. But here's to hoping they do. I mean, I think Hurts deserves a lot of credit for playing the way he did this year.
All right, the Bucs move on to the divisional round. They will host the winner of the Monday night game between the Rams and the Cardinals. The defense is back. The offense is the offense. It's just a very Tom Brady offense at this point.
This is going to be because it's a beautifully efficient offense. Like it is what every NFL coach and quarterback aspires to create, but it just sucks to watch. Like it's so boring. And I've had a lot of bad takes on this show. This is going to be my worst one. I'm just tired of watching a Tom Brady offense, and that could be the biggest compliment to him, because he's figured out a way to just manipulate the NFL in a way that he will never not win, and that's great for him. It just sucks. It just sucks for me. I don't find it particularly aesthetically pleasing. Like, if you were to ask me, like, would you rather watch the Eagles score 13 points but do it in a cool way every round of the playoffs, or watch the Bucs put up 40? I would rather watch the Eagles score 13.
No, it's not just because I'm a nice guy. I'm with you on that take. I've had that take before. I used to have this argument about when Josh Allen was like a complete wild man. And it's like, I would rather watch Josh Allen do, who knows what's going to happen on any play. Turnovers are fun. Inefficient football, incomplete passes are no fun, but like inefficient football, like just, like a wide range of things that could happen on any given snap. That stuff is fun. Tom Brady is it's just ice cold efficiency.
Mike McCarthy he listened to the lead of the podcast, and then he listened to this and he was like, come on, Gary, you can't just say that. Can't be mean to me and then say wild football is fun now. Can't just back into that.
I did not expect the Cowboys would just run out the clock on themselves.
Steelers, Chiefs.
You know something, Connor? You and I, we're in the predictions making business, let's call it. That's not really a business, but let's call it a business. And we're wrong a lot of the time. And the weird thing is, sometimes when we think we're the most right, we end up being terribly wrong. Like, you're just sure how a game's going to go, and it goes some completely opposite way. That did not happen on Sunday night. We were both exactly right. Anyone who has watched these two teams play football in 2021/22, knew exactly how this game would play out. Even with the bonus of, if you wanted to say, like, well, Steelers could stay in it if, like, Cam Hayward were to strip a ball and TJ Watt were to scoop it up and run for a touchdown. That happened. That like, everything the Steelers could have done to win this game happened. They were just mathematically incapable of winning it.
Yeah, I mean, at one point in the third quarter, I looked at Ben Roethlisberger's passing chart, and he had attempted 5 passes beyond the line of scrimmage. 5. The rest of them were at least a yard or two behind the line of scrimmage. And honestly, what are you doing at that point? Like, if you're not going to... If you're the Steelers and you're not going to come in there and just totally Brandon Staley the thing and go for every fourth down and just be crazy, unpredictable people to try to match the intensity of your defense, what are you doing? Like, the idea that you were going to somehow play clock control ball and keep Patrick Mahomes off the field enough to edge out like a classic Steeler victory was just an asinine thought process going into this game.
First of all, wipe your hard drive because you don't want anyone finding out you're looking at a Ben Roethlisberger passing chart in this day and age.
Gross.
My whole thing with this team, and we had this conversation all summer, and I was the obstinate jerk along the way, and I just kept on saying, why would Ben Roethlisberger come back to run the offense they ran last year? That was a completely just disastrous offense. They wouldn't do that, and yeah, they did, and they did it all year, and whatever. I mean, look. Even if they came out and were just like, we're just gonna, I don't know, we're gonna pull out the old K gun, we're gonna chuck it 70 times, and they're all gonna be downfield, it still wasn't gonna work. They weren't gonna win this game unless there were just a series of those plays. And by the way, I just want to point out, why do you, if you're the Chiefs in this game, why do you run the Wildcat with Mecole Hardman, who has had basically ball handling issues all season, just in terms of like catching the ball and running with it? Why did you do that? That's my only criticism of the Chiefs in this one.
Maybe you knew that he was struggling with ball control issues and you figured you were going to win this game by 60 points, so you put him in there to give him some confidence. My question for you, so going back to the Steelers offense, have you ever had pretzel chips?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like the thin pretzels?
Yep.
Okay.
Those are good.
So, yeah, they're great. But you know what it tastes like? A pretzel, right?
Yeah.
Like it tastes like a regular pretzel. And so I was looking at the packaging on it the other day, and on the back it said, "We set out to rethink the pretzel." And I was like, what an amazing claim. And that was what I kept thinking of when I saw like the Steelers. Like, they came into this year trying to rethink the pretzel, but like, here's the thing: when you rethink a pretzel, it tastes like a goddamn pretzel. And like the whole time you and I were saying like, well, because you and I are big Matt Canada guys. We are like, Matt Canada does a summer tour. You and I are in the whatever you want to call it, the lawn seats, dancing, having a good time. We are seeing Matt Canada live. But nothing, like, we were like, oh, Najee Harris, Matt Canada, pretzel's never going to be the same again. No, guess what? Tasted like a pretzel, like a salty, crunchy thing that just is so ultimately, I don't know, I like pretzels, but like ultimately not what you want to build the entire meal around.
Yeah, that's fair. I will say, I mean, look, they did rethink the pretzel. It was original. They can call it a chip now. They legally can do that. I guess the only way you can go with it, I don't know, like a super thick pretzel, like too thick to even like, you gotta chip away at it with like a, I don't know, one of those little awl and hammer type things.
It's like the size of like a Robert Caro novel. Like, it's just like you get a bag and just one of them comes out. It's here's your pretzel.
It's more for show at this point, but we'll work on that. We'll rethink the rethought pretzel. But yeah, I don't know, man. Look, Ben Roethlisberger had on the field, had a wonderful career, and in his prime was just an absolute sight to behold out there. And what it was the last 2 years was, boy, it was really just unwatchable.
Reminded me of one time I left a job, and I left. Like, I told everyone I was leaving, and I said goodbye, and I walked out, and then the cab wasn't there, and it wasn't going to be there for like 25 more minutes. I thought it was there, but it wasn't. Like, the Uber canceled. So I had to turn around and walk back in after I had like emotionally hugged everybody and said goodbye forever. And then just kind of stood around, and everyone was like, so like, what are your, how's your dog? Did you give him a bath recently? And I think that's kind of what Ben Roethlisberger's thing was. It was like, okay, we did weeks of goodbyes. Like, we did the final home game, we did the final game, we did the whole thing, and then we had to do this crappy 7th seed playoff game, which, God, like, I'm still bothered by this. Like, if you're gonna do it, like you said, pull out the K gun. Like, just do something totally insane that nobody's prepared for, and leave the field with your arm so barely intact that like you're not going to be able to like throw a wiffle ball for the next 10 years. Just like, why not? What else like, why are we like punting in this game? It just doesn't make any sense.
It's over now. We're past it.
Thank you.
They will
mercifully.
Man, can you imagine if he came back next year? No. Okay.
Colts.
So they're gonna have a new quarterback next season. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they can lure Russell Wilson or one of these dudes who comes free here. Maybe they get one in the draft as they have in the past. But it's going to be someone and something different there. And it's an interesting group in the receiving core. It's an offensive line that you figure, let's think optimistically, will steadily improve as they play together more often here. The defense is just super weird. The defense it really is just T.J. Watt and Cam Hayward, and then Minka Fitzpatrick, and then it's just like, gosh, I mean they couldn't stop the run. Jerick McKinnon looked like I don't know what the comp is at this point. He looked like a really good running back. He looked like Barry Sanders or something out there in this game. And I don't know, man. This was just not a game that should have been staged.
Yeah, I think that there are times I've referenced this before, but are you like Wet Hot American Summer, right?
I like it. Yeah, not a super fan, but I like it.
Okay, I would classify myself as a super fan. The scene where the campers are playing kickball from the other place, and they just get off the bus, and then they decide that it would be trite to play the game. That's what should have happened today, right? That's like, I think I've referenced this on the show before, but like they the Steelers should have gotten there, and Mike Tomlin just should have said, this just feels a little forced. I mean, you guys can do whatever you want here, and then we're just gonna hightail it out of there. Good motivational speech from him, though, I would say. Told his players before the game, we're not blinking. I guess meaning like we're not going to be afraid. And he said, if you're a blinker, cut your eyelids off. Which,
oh man,
yeah,
all right, nice.
I mean, that's your idea of,
it's going beyond Dan Campbell. Yeah, that's some kind of self-mutilation at this point.
If you did cut your eyelids off, what would happen? Like, you need to blink, right?
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, it needs to happen.
I feel like we're going to get really weird emails over this. Rightfully so. I mean, we brought it up.
There's like a really niche optometrist that deals in, like, eyelid removal, and he's just like, and he just slams the table, and he's like, thank God, something to email this podcast about.
Patriots Bills.
All right, so yeah, the Bills went out and played essentially a perfect offensive game in the very, very cold weather. Connor, you were out there. Give me your impressions of the cold, and then give me your impressions of the game.
I was called weak by my in-laws, actually, because I was at the game, and they said, well, how cold was it? And I said, well, it was 9 degrees. And they said, well, at our house, it was -1 degrees. So it was way colder for us. But it's a different kind of cold. It's like an all-encompassing, like it feels like if you're sticking like a large adhesive to your body, imagine if your whole body was covered in a Band-Aid, and then that adhesive from the Band-Aid was like -10 degrees. That's how it felt to be outside. I took my gloves off to text somebody, and then my hands immediately went numb. And I went to use a porta potty, and the blue water was all frozen. So it was like a giant block of so like everything that had happened in there before was just frozen in time for a minute. And it was, porta potties are gross anyway. But so that was sort of the elements. But a fun game to go to. I went into it wanting to do a story on Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. And so I had charted, I planned to chart their whole game, where they were lined up, how many different places they had lined up, all their responsibilities. And I did it for the first 3 quarters, and then the editor Mitch said, we can't we can't write this game about like two safeties. Like this is one of the most dominant ass kickings in the history of professional football. That said, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are amazing, and basically Micah Hyde with that interception won the game. I think early on to close on that Nelson Aguilar ball, and then put them up 14-0, and then they kept Mac Jones from even dreaming of attempting a pass beyond 5 yards. They were so dominant in that game, and I think if they make the Super Bowl, they are going to be such a large reason why. I mean, this isn't an academic groundbreaking moment here. They're both all pros, but they were just spectacular.
Yeah, there's there's a butterfly effect argument to be made about that interception. It felt huge at the moment. We just didn't know that the Bills were literally going to score a touchdown every time their offense got on the field in that game, which obviously ended up being the larger factor. But it was incredible range on that play. It was also it was a weird play in that Mac Jones tried to pump. It was to the same side of the field, and it's like Hunter Henry's route was too deep for that pump to actually draw Micah Hyde toward him. So the pump just ended up actually starting Micah Hyde on a sprint, basically toward the spot where he intercepted the ball. And I don't know, maybe there's a lesson to be learned in there. Maybe the route should be spaced out a little bit differently if you are going to utilize a pump on that play, but nonetheless, just a pretty spectacular play.
And there's an inherent confidence there too. Like, I didn't see Micah Hyde flinch, and they were backed up, so that was the perfect view for us because in the Bills press box, we're in the corner of the end zone, and so they were backed up right against us, and I was watching Hyde anyway. And you're right, he didn't move on the fake. He also saw Jordan Poyer had Hunter Henry, and I mean, they've worked so well together for so long. He's like, I'm not even moving up on that because I know he's got him covered, and so why don't I just kind of start heading in this direction? But still, I think Next Gen Stats had it. He closed 24 yards in 2.9 seconds, which is just ridiculous. Like, and made like a Willie Mays catch right out in front of Nelson Aguilar's face. But it was tremendous. And then I think from a confidence perspective, for them to come back then and continuously run the ball, like Devin Singletary has now emerged as a legitimate rushing threat, and there was like a lot of effort. Bills are funny. Like after the game, there was like, just basically them making fun of reporters all year for being like, you guys didn't believe Devin Singletary, and it's like, well, they were, they had a reason to not believe for a long time, and now he's playing well. So good, good for you guys. Everything is working out. But home run day for Brian Daboll, I thought that was just, I mean, that was you just laminated the resume. You bought the fancy paper for the resume, and you turned that in. And I love the fact that they just did not take their foot off the Patriots' throat at all. I mean, they were throwing play action dimes up 40-10, and that was the kind of night where like you just go into the rest of the playoffs kind of like rolling a little bit. Like it reminded me of a little bit of like how the Legion of Boom Seahawks used to treat people, and it worked for them confidence wise. That you get something rolling going there.
You saw a hint, and look, Josh Allen and his throwing the ball was sort of the story of the game here, but you said it with Devin Singletary, and you saw something of a different identity that we haven't seen from this offense this year. I mean, look, at Reggie Gilliam, they don't have the snap counts at PFR yet, but I'm guessing that was his season high for sort of snap percentage, or at least around there. So, you have two backs out there. You can do that if you want. And you can also just have Josh Allen just throw it all over people. And boy, if you are the Patriots, and for 2 decades, everyone in that division was looking at you and saying, what are we going to do about Tom Brady? Like, we have to figure this out. The past 3 games, let me rephrase that. It's the past 4 games, but we're throwing away the Gale Force win game in December.
You hate that game.
I enjoyed that game fine. I just thought the takes off of it were ridiculous, specifically the takes that were like, well, Belichick just doesn't have any respect for Josh Allen, and that's why he was willing to go out there. And it's like, no, that's not it at all. Josh Allen just destroyed his defense less than a year ago. So the last 3 games where we've had normal conditions between these two teams, Bills are just under 40 points per game. The last 2 games, they haven't punted a single time. And the difference in this one, and you said it with Brian Dable, because when they met in Foxborough, a lot of that was Josh Allen's superhero ball. I mean, it was just incredible plays that it was just kind of like, okay, well, that's not by design. That's just an unbelievable athlete doing something that should not be done. There wasn't a ton of that on Saturday night. It was just every call was working. So if you're Bill Belichick, I don't know what you really do at this point, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember a Belichick defense just being consistently dominated by a single player and a single offense repeatedly at this point, basically 3 times in a row.
Yeah, fairly stunning, and especially since, and I know this is, it's not anybody's favorite comp, but, I was asking about Josh Allen in the offseason when I was talking to a few NFL coaches, and they're like, it's Cam Newton, it's a slightly more accurate Cam Newton, right? It's a Cam Newton with maybe some better touch on the ball, and maybe with a little bit better arm strength too, to be quite honest. But the theory is similar in that you want to spread teams out, and then you want to force them to decide if they're going to devote somebody to prevent Josh Allen from running, or if they're going to drop that extra defender and take away like Stefan Diggs or something like that. And I'm surprised that the Patriots, who had Cam Newton and who can adequately defend Cam Newton, and who have seen Josh Allen as many times as they have sort of struggled to find, with the versatile players that they've had, the adequate balance between personnel deployment. Like, it just seemed like they were completely lost. I mean, they tried rushing, a ton of people, and almost successfully rushed a lot of people into designed quarterback runs and still couldn't stop anything. So, you just wonder what happened there.
Other side of the ball, Mac Jones was very Mac Jonesian, and it's sort of we don't want to get too far into the future at this point. Mac Jones is going to be the guy there for a minimum of the next 4 seasons, and I don't know if there's any real reason to think it won't be beyond that, but it's like a double-edged sword here, because you're Mac Jones, you've been drafted by Bill Belichick, and that automatically sort of coronates you in a way as a guy who is going to be a special player, and he was by far the best rookie quarterbacks this year, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, for the next 5 years, he's gonna play twice a year at least against these Bills, and when you see Josh Allen out there, and then you see Mac Jones out there, it's kind of like, oh, all right, this is really I mean, Bill Belichick kept on saying after the game, he just kept on repeating, like, we just couldn't keep up with them. And I mean, that's kind of it. You're not going to be able to keep up with them.
A couple of Mac Jones things. Well, I agree with you, obviously, but that first drive up until the Micah Hyde interception, he was fantastic. Like, he was making off-schedule plays. He was stepping up in the pocket and hitting receivers. I think he had like a 20-yard run on that drive, or it was at least a 20-yard run.
He did. I'd actually written down after the Bills' opening drive, because Josh Allen had 2 out-of-structure plays that were fantastic, and I just sort of jotted down, like, not getting that from Mac Jones. And no, he came back immediately and had 2 of them on their drive.
It would have been awesome if they just went purely like Mac Jones zone read, and they were like, try to stop this, guys, But yeah, I agree. I mean, you're not going to. So either the defense has to get way better, which it could, because here's the other thing about Josh Allen, right? He is peaking at this moment. He's having his hot girl summer, and so he is at a point where we're just not able to fathom how to slow him down, when in reality, every quarterback eventually gets slowed down, right? I mean, Bill Belichick will figure out a way to slow him down. He will get the right personnel in there, and he will have a defense to stop him at some point. And I think when that happens, you'll be able to at least play adequate. Mac Jones can hang on his heels long enough, but not last night, not in that environment, not when you fall down 14-0. Like that was just a death sentence, and that place was on fire from the minute everybody walked in there. And you always think of the Patriots as like these emotionless, crowd-averse people, but I would have been absolutely intimidated beyond belief to play in that stadium. Like, even their musical choice of everything is terrifying. Like, it's all these angry, drunk people in hunting gear, and then their touchdown song is "Shout." And then it's just so like, you're just like, oh wow. It's like when it's like in a horror movie when like the killer's in there and he plays something weird like I don't know, like a B-side off of like a Zeppelin album or something like that, like just some weird sort of like Livin' Lovin' Maid or something like that, but yeah, it's that was the kind of thing. The whole thing was just very circus-esque. I would never play in the NFL, but I also wouldn't want to play the Bills.
Very Tarantino-ish with the music selections,
yes,
along with the intimidation factor. But yeah, Bills make me want to shout. I mean, they have to play it. So yeah, it'll be a good one next weekend. They're going back to Kansas City. They won there by 18 earlier this season in sort of a rainy Sunday night game. And I don't know, both these teams are pretty much at their peak right now. And I feel like this is some sort of apology from the Cosmos after putting the Steelers in the playoffs and putting that game on Sunday night. We get this one with really two quarterbacks at the peak of their powers right now.
Yeah, the seventh, the additional team in the playoffs was my fault. I'll take the full blame for that. And when that happened, I was like, this is a great idea. And editor Mitch was like, this is a horrible idea. And I was like, no, you're wrong. Like, there's going to be a 7th seed that makes a run here. And like, the NFL is great and other teams are going to get hot. And then like the Bears-Saints game happened. And then this game happened. And I was like, yeah, no, you were totally right. We should never allow more teams in the playoffs. So this is good. Chiefs, Bills. I think there's, at this point in time, at this moment where I'm sitting here right now, I don't see a way that the Chiefs defense stops Buffalo. Like I have Buffalo going to the Super Bowl, so I might be biased here. And the Chiefs obviously looked fantastic. They looked electric against the Steelers, but I see Buffalo rolling in this game. I honestly don't think it's going to be close.
Well, we'll have more about that on the midweek show when we preview the conference semifinals.
Raiders, Bengals.
All right, so we're back at the first game of Wild Card Weekend, and that was, of course, the Bengals' home victory over the Raiders. First time in a million years they've won a postseason game. Look, this game was actually, it kind of unfolded exactly as expected, with maybe the exception of the Raiders' defense did hold in the red zone a little bit, which they just haven't done over the course of the year. That, as I always say, those are always small sample sizes. They are volatile from week to week, and the defense held on this week. But, boy, Joe Burrow, and I feel like we talk about it every week. It's not just the efficiency and the fact that he's playing really well and all that stuff. That offense he runs is like, I mean, that's if Peyton Manning was back in the league, that's the kind of offense you'd have him running. That is an offense of like a 10-year veteran. And he is operating it at just an incredible level, and he's doing it with the right side of the offensive line that doesn't really offer any resistance.
That first touchdown throw nobody was open on that play. Nobody.
Yeah.
The tight end that he threw it to was not open. And they had an inside leverage defender, which is, you would guess that's kind of where he was going to throw the ball. And then they had somebody on, if he tried to kind of throw like a stretch ball to try to let CJ try to kind of like catch it like a post defender almost. They had a guy there too. Mm-hmm. There was no window, and he completed that pass. I still have no idea how he completed that pass. And the Raiders all day just dared him to complete high difficulty passes. So it was like, comebacks right at the right on the sideline, or any of these sort of deep outs, all this stuff. And he just did it. Like, he just said, okay, if these are the throws you're giving me, like, we're just going to bang you like that. Jamar Chase was spectacular, but this is Burrow just making throw after throw after throw. You can't defend that. As much as we said you can't defend Josh Allen, Burrow's a different player, but in a similar way, you can't stop that.
It is. I mean, look, this season was absolutely Josh Allen might have already been knocking on the door there, but Burrow and Herbert just took their game into that level of, sort of the next generational quarterbacks here. As far as the Raiders go, they were one throw away from forcing overtime here. A team that really should have just gone away, I don't know, in early December or something like that. They stuck around throughout. Derek Carr... Look, my Derek Carr take is there are so many quarterbacks around the league who just absolutely, twist themselves into convincing themselves that they're underdogs in some way. They've been disrespected in some way. They didn't go number one overall. They didn't win the Heisman. They weren't recruited by X school coming out of a high school, or in some cases the offer came later than they wanted to. And Derek Carr 3 years ago basically had a coach who was just, even not so subtly looking for another quarterback. And, he ends up outlasting that coach, and he ends up being the one who really, carries might be overstating it, because there were obviously a lot of parts of this team that ended up working out well. But, he was as responsible as anyone for having this team in the position it was, which is a position they had just no right being in.
Yeah, John Gruden, Derek Carr walked in, and John Gruden had his feet up on the desk reading Other Quarterbacks magazine. And
it's a good magazine. Yeah,
I do enjoy Other Quarterbacks. It's my second favorite magazine. And but yeah, he was in on the Tom Brady thing. Pardon the French, but when Tom Brady was on the shop and he said, you're gonna pick that motherfucker over me, that was Derek Carr. He was talking about Derek Carr, and I'm happy for him. I think he was perpetually the 10th, maybe 11th best quarterback in the NFL, which is very good. Mm-hmm. He makes much less than some of these other players, plays in a situation that's far less enviable, and really stepped up. Throughout the season this year, made some of the best throws that I think he's ever made in his career. I think he's made some of the toughest throws. There was the Steelers game, I think it was, or maybe it was the Ravens game, where he just got the crap beaten out of him, and he's stepping up and completing passes. And I think this is a nice thing. If you're Las Vegas, as much as I'm trying to talk myself out of hiring an interim coach, if Derek Carr becomes who he is now, I think it's a less intimidating prospect. He can help you lead that franchise.
They got to run it back. They just got to try it. You just got to try it. It just might work. You did it with the other guy. You got the guy you wanted and you pined over for years, and you didn't go anywhere. Rich Bisaccia was the guy who had to take you to the place you wanted to go.
He wrote a handwritten letter to every single staffer after the game. How about that?
Yeah.
Just a sweet old guy thing to do. And really, if you're going to miss on a head coach, don't you miss on a sweet old Italian man? Wouldn't that be just that's the miss, right?
That is. That's that George Young would tell you that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's probably a very dated vision of a football team. But no, you could do worse. You could do worse than Rich Bisaccia right now.
Yes, absolutely.
Urban Meyer.
That's what we're all thinking. The last two super coach hirings were basically Urban Meyer and John Gruden.
Yeah,
look at how those worked out. Yeah.
I was thinking at the beginning of this segment, I was just going to let you intro Raiders, Bengals, and then I was just going to blow a whistle really loudly in the middle of what you were saying. At the risk of, I was still thinking about it. At the risk of, it would have woken up the dog, and then the dog would have woke up the kids, and then and then I wouldn't be allowed to do this podcast anymore. But that was just so egregious and so awful, and everyone's like, well, he probably would have caught it anyway. It doesn't matter. If you're we need to start allowing referees to be humanized to the point where they can say, yeah, I screwed that up. I made a mistake, I blew a whistle, and we need to run this play back again and start over.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, yes, it probably was going to be a touchdown. I don't know. Does the safety come over and separate Tyler Boyd from the ball if the whistle hasn't blown or something like that? So but also it just you've stopped the play. Blowing the whistle stops the play.
That's like in the rule book. I looked up the rule, and I hate looking things up, and I looked it up, and it's there. Can't do that.
I mean, and I'm trying to think of a scenario. I mean, if you had a guy with no one within 40 yards of him who was like walking into the end zone, maybe you could be like, okay, well, this was inevitable. But man, it's just so bad. And again, it's just another one of those things where it's like everyone watching the game live was like, oh, that's really weird how they blew the whistle in the middle of the game, and now we're just not going to do anything about it. So, you get... Everyone knows what happened. You get the explanation on the field, which everyone knows is incorrect. And then you get the statement from the league after the game where it's like, well, they decided on the field. But like anyone with a TV, anyone with a device of any kind that could have been streaming the game could have told you what the correct ruling was right there. And that's, I don't know.
It's sort of the football equivalent of, did you ever play bingo and then yell bingo if you didn't have bingo?
No, that's a total jerk move.
Oh, man. That was like... we used to live for that. Like at the church picnic every year, you'd just sit in on bingo, and you'd be like, bingo! And then the person would be like, okay, everyone hands away from the cards. And then we'd be like, haha, no, just kidding. And they'd be like, oh, we hate kids. And... but this was the football, like, you blew the whistle. You're yelling bingo. Hands off the cards. And no, you can't do that. And the Raiders are just... Raiders fans have been through enough. Like, Raiders fans have been living with tinfoil hats on, in some reasons legitimately believing that the league has it out for them. At this point, like, I'm almost converted. And then that happens, and it's just like, just play the down over again. Just for once, get these people off of the deepest recesses of Reddit and back into the real world where they agree that officiating is somewhat fair and benevolent.
Don't call bingo if you don't have bingo.
Don't do it.
But put on a t-shirt.
Do it when you're young, because definitely don't do it when you're old.
All right, we will have a preview of the conference semifinal games coming up on the midweek show, but that's going to do it for now. Enjoy Monday Night Football. The MMQB NFL podcast is Conor Orr and me, Gary Gramley. We are produced by Shelby Royston. SI's executive producer of podcasts is Scott Brody, and our senior podcast producer is Dan Bloom. Mark Moravik is emeritus editor of the MMQB, and Andy Benoit is the founder of the MMQB NFL podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this feed on Apple Podcasts, and once you do, please leave a rating and review because it really does help other people find the show, which is also available on Spotify, Stitcher, SI.com, and wherever else you listen to podcasts.